Dawn in the Badlands of Wyoming. A team of paleontologists heads out to investigate a unique site just outside the small town of Glen Rock.
Everybody out, grab a shovel, pick.
In charge is Dr. Scott Persons from the College of Charleston, a paleontologist with a lifelong passion for dinosaurs.
I've been coming to Glen Rock since I was 12, but I came out here and I loved it. And I've been coming out here pretty much every summer since.
Scott's on his way to a dig site that lies in a layer of rock called the Lance Formation, one of the greatest concentrations of dinosaur fossils in the world. 66 million years ago, at the end of the Cretaceous period, the remains of a huge inland sea covered much of Wyoming. Its muddy fringes created the perfect conditions for preserving dinosaur bones.
It's a great place because it's a spot where we've got not just a tremendous abundance of dinosaur bones, but other kinds of fossil sites too.
In the late 1800s, competing teams of adventurers scoured this landscape, hunting for the most extraordinary fossils. Their rivalry became known as the Bone Wars, and it unearthed many enormous dinosaurs.
Absolutely enormous.
But there was one beast that these early paleontologists prized above all others, an animal whose remains still draw scientists here today.
This is prime Tyrannosaur territory. The northern landmasses, Tyrannosaurs are #1.
66 million years ago, the dry Wyoming Badlands were lush forests. The ruler of this world was the most terrifying dinosaur of all time, Tyrannosaurus Rex. As big as a bus and weighing in at around 7,000 kilos, T-Rex has captured our imagination for centuries. But despite its fame, much about its life remains unknown. How did it rise to dominate this world? A clue could lie with footprints preserved in the Wyoming mud. Scott and his team are here to investigate one such set of ancient footprints. They bear the telltale signs of a tyrannosaur.
So you're looking at 3 deep toe impressions, 1, 2, 3. And you can also make out a well-defined heel pad at the back. This toe up here is particularly well preserved. You can see there's a large fleshy pad there, and then it ends with the indentation from one long, sharp claw.
Scott thinks a tyrannosaur left these prints when it walked along what was then a muddy riverbank.
If you look closely, in addition to the footprints themselves, you can see that the rock that they're left in has this slight undulating pattern to it. Those are ripple marks left by the mudflat environment. So 66 million years ago, we were here on the edge of a coastal estuary, and in the mud, the dinosaurs were walking around. They left many, many, many tracks, but occasionally the conditions would change. The sediments would harden up, they would have the opportunity to completely fossilize.
Dinosaur footprints are very rare. An entire set is even more special.
There are about 3 Tyrannosaur trackways known in the entire world. This is the best preserved of all the tracks.
Scott plans to make them immortal by using a laser to create a 3D digital copy. Scanning the trackway will give Scott the ability to take a perfect digital copy back to his lab, where he can study it in detail and discover if it was left by the most famous tyrannosaur of all, the T-Rex.
Tyrannosaurs are a group of big carnivorous dinosaurs that show up very late in the age of dinosaurs. They're characterized by having incredibly deep jaws, very thick teeth, really, really wide skulls. We hope to learn, first off, how big it was.
There were several species of tyrannosaur. But it is the awesome size of the T-Rex that makes its fossils prized around the world. Steve Brussati from Edinburgh University is one of the world's leading experts on tyrannosaurs. At the National Museum of Scotland, he examines one of the biggest T-Rexes that ever walked the earth.
T-Rex to me is the ultimate dinosaur. It would have been the largest pure meat eater that ever lived on land in the entire history of the earth. This was found in Hell Creek in Montana, and this is enormous. Just look at the size and the scale of this animal. This is a fully grown adult T-Rex. It was about 12 or 13 meters long, so about 40 feet long from the tip of the snout to the tip of the tail. It would have weighed about 7 tons. This was an enormous apex predator dinosaur.
Paleontologists have discovered that much of T-Rex's body shape and posture evolved to accommodate its most potent weapon, its huge head.
This head is about the size of a bathtub. This is a front-loaded animal, and that head is so big that if it opened its jaws wide, I could nestle inside of its mouth. And you can see all of these teeth lining the jaws. There's about 50 teeth in the mouth, and the biggest ones are about 1 foot long. So this is a monster from a child's nightmare brought to life.
With a head this large, T-Rex needed a huge tail just to stay on its feet.
That tail was a counterbalance. It was like a seesaw, so that that big head wouldn't tip the T-Rex over, that it wouldn't fall face first.
It walked on a pair of the sturdiest legs that ever evolved.
The legs are massive. This was an animal that weighed more than an elephant, but it only could walk on 2 legs, and it was only those toes that touched the ground. T-Rex was like a tiptoer, like a ballerina.
T-Rex footprints, like the ones in Wyoming, can be used to work out the size of the animal that left them. In his lab, Scott compares the scan of the Glenrock print against known measurements to calculate the creature's hip height.
So this is our single best preserved Tyrannosaur footprint. And what we're going to do right now is take a quick distance measure.
The measurements reveal a surprise. They're unusually small for a T-Rex.
Our Tyrannosaur tracks are about 505 millimeters in length. And that indicates an animal that's got a hip height, a total leg length of about 2.3 meters. Now, by Tyrannosaur standards, that's not very big.
The footprint of a grown T-Rex is about 1 meter long and half a meter wide. That's much larger than the footprint in Wyoming. Shrinking the foot to fit the print and extrapolating to the rest of the skeleton reveals that the dinosaur which left these tracks was only about 2 meters. But the footprint's shape is right for a tyrannosaur. So for Scott, there is only one conclusion. This is not an adult. It's a youngster.
We definitely are dealing with a juvenile Tyrannosaur, probably a Tyrannosaur tween, so an individual that's between 10, 11, 12 years of age.
The possibility that this footprint could belong to a young T-Rex is both rare and exciting. Fossil hunters have found dozens of adult T-Rex skeletons, most of them in North America. The T-Rex is probably the best understood dinosaur in the world. But when it comes to juvenile T-Rex, investigators have only found a handful of fossils. So we know very little about how young T-Rex developed and how they lived.
Finding the bones of babies and younger T-Rexes, this is a big deal. We always want to find new skeletons of younger T-Rexes. That will reveal so much new information about how the king of dinosaurs grew into its kingdom.
From what can be determined from the few fossils available, young T-Rex was slimmer than its elders. Its legs comparatively longer, its head comparatively smaller. But there is much still to discover about its behavior and abilities. Could they reveal what this teenage terror was up to. Not far from the Tyrannosaur trackway, Scott's team uncovers some clues. The footprints in the Badlands are a rare opportunity to learn about tyrannosaurs in their early years.
We've cut back into the hillside a little bit further with the hopes of finding more of our trail of tracks, and that's exactly what we've done.
More footprints. Scott thinks these tracks were made by a different kind of dinosaur, a plant-eating hadrosaur.
Hadrosaurs have got 3 wide-spreading toes. There's one toe, there's another, and then over here, covered up by mud, is the third. This is from a particularly large individual, easily pushing 30 feet in total length.
Hadrosaurs were large beasts that could grow up to 13 meters long and weighed over 7 tons. They probably lived in herds for safety, much like bison today. That's because, although they had tough, scaly skin, they had no armor. Was the young Tyrannosaur at Glenrock hunting them? It was once thought that T-Rex was just a scavenger. While it's unlikely that T-Rex would turn down a fresh carcass, evidence now shows that T-Rex was also a skilled hunter, capable of chasing down a hadrosaur.
Tyrannosaurus was absolutely a hunter. Tyrannosaurs have got very long legs, indicates that they're fast. We know from the bones of herbivorous dinosaurs that actually have tyrannosaur teeth lodged in them and have since healed afterwards that Tyrannosaurus was absolutely going after live prey.
But could the juvenile Tyrannosaur have also hunted down these giant hadrosaurs? The uncovered trackways allow the team to compare the speed of the 2 different creatures.
We have got the footprints of both hadrosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, and tyrannosaurs. So both predator and prey walking across the same area, very likely within 24 hours of each other.
By carefully recording distances between the individual footprints, Scott can reconstruct the hadrosaur's gait.
So a wonderful thing about a trackway, as opposed to just a single isolated footprint, is you can measure the stride length of a dinosaur. You can figure out how far it was swinging its leg in between each footstep. This is actually recording prehistoric life in action.
Scott estimates they were traveling at nearly 5 kilometers an hour. So how does a tyrannosaur compare?
So here is a set of tracks, and we care about the left one. So we'll measure from the heel pad of each one and come up with that distance. You can see it's going about 3.5 meters. So that's how much the Tyrannosaur is covering with each full swing of a leg.
The 11.5-foot leg swing suggests that the juvenile Tyrannosaur was traveling at around 6 miles an hour. It reveals that whether walking or running, T-Rex was far faster than its prey.
It's moving through its environment at roughly twice the rate of the duck-billed dinosaur. It makes sense if that's the animal you're going to hunt, you're fast enough to catch it.
Tyrannosaur was a sprinter, but Hadrosaur was a marathon runner who could often get a good head start.
If you're a hadrosaur, you just have to spot a predator that's literally the size of a billboard sign.
But in these confrontations, perhaps a juvenile T-Rex had help. It was long thought that T-Rex was a solitary hunter. But sites have now been discovered that contain many T-Rex remains, a mix of juveniles and adults. It raises the possibility that T-Rexes operated as a team.
It's pretty clear from these sites that tyrannosaurs normally would have been social animals. They would have grouped together. So if one T-Rex chasing you down isn't terrifying enough, imagine an entire group of them running after you.
A juvenile T-Rex would have needed guile and luck to catch a nimble hadrosaur. But even if it was successful, did this teenager have the power to bring such mighty prey down? Did the juvenile rely on the adult to finish the hunt? A clue could lie here on another Glenrock hillside, where the team is sifting through a layer rich in bones. Here, Scott is searching for fossilized remains from the mighty predator and hoping to find evidence of juveniles. It's a difficult and painstaking task.
We've got an abundance of Tyrannosaur material, but those are almost all adult specimens. The younger ones just don't seem to preserve as well.
The soft bones of the younger animals rarely endure. But in the fossil beds, the diggers often find the remains of tougher teeth.
I understand you've got something for me? Got a couple things, all right, all right. What do you got? What do you got? Oh, look at that! That's gorgeous. That's the biggest one that we've found so far. So that, yes, absolutely.
The tooth is small and viciously sharp. But it's from a small velociraptor, not a tyrannosaur.
The raptor tooth is very flat. It's laterally compressed that way. The teeth of a raptor are better at piercing and slashing. Tyrannosaur tooth is much more rounded.
Today, there's no sign of tyrannosaur teeth here. But on a previous dig, Scott made an incredible find: the tiny tooth of a hatchling.
When this Tyrannosaur hatched out of its egg, the size, it was about on the scale of a house cat. It would grow the size of a monster like this. My gosh, is it scary. All of evolution and all of red in tooth and claw that nature is, this is the scariest tooth that's ever evolved.
T-Rex has the largest teeth of any dinosaur ever found. 30 centimeters long, with sharp points and serrated edges, they were formidable weapons. A male adult would have had over 50 of them in its jaws, making it the unstoppable killing machine of the Badlands. But how does the much smaller juvenile T-Rex compare? Did its bite have the power to kill the mighty hadrosaur? For paleontologist Steve Brussati, an adult T-Rex's teeth are hard to ignore.
It's really those teeth that are the most stunning thing about T-Rex. Some of these teeth were a foot long. And those teeth, they're sharp and they're strong. They're like a banana crossed with a steak knife. And they were so strong, T-Rex could crush through the bones of its prey. And that is a really gruesome, vile way of eating. Very few animals are able to do that, and T-Rex did that.
T-Rex's teeth are hugely impressive. But paleontologists suspect that the real secret to the adult T-Rex's bone-crushing bite lies elsewhere. Because bite strength is all about muscle. Scott examines a cast of a huge adult T-Rex skull. It comes from a dinosaur he helped uncover called Scotty.
So Scotty was found in Saskatchewan, Canada. Scotty is among the largest tyrannosaurs known in the world. We estimate that Scotty is over 40 feet in total length, with an estimated weight in excess of 8 tons. Tyrannosaurs are sort of the Rottweilers of the carnivorous dinosaurs. If you look at the depth of the lower jaw, it's absolutely enormous. This whole region right here is where tremendous jaw muscles would attach.
The jaw muscles in an adult T-Rex run up and attach to the bones at the back of the skull.
Back of the skull is expanded. That creates an extra large region for the huge jaw muscles to attach all across the top of the skull in this section right here and along the side. This is the place where the danger of a tyrannosaur lies. That's what powers the bite. And then they crush the jaws together like that.
But what about the juvenile T-Rex? Their jaws are thin and narrow, more delicate than the adult, with much smaller teeth and far less muscle. So, could a juvenile bite be strong enough to crush the bones of large prey? A clue lies in fossilized remnants of a hadrosaur.
This is a cast of bone from a very, very lucky dinosaur. Right there, and that object is one tyrannosaur tooth. a Tyrannosaur clawed all the way up to its tail, took a bite, the tooth embedded in the solid bone, but then the tooth snapped off and the hadrosaur just managed to get away.
For most people, this kind of fossil is a curiosity. But for paleontologists like Jack Tseng, it's an opportunity. Jack is fascinated by the bite force of extinct predators, especially young ones.
Bite force is important because it determines at which level in the food web a particular predator can exist. Whether or not juveniles were able to even hunt or attempt to hunt those animals partially depends on how much bite force they have.
Calculating the bite force of any animal is a challenge, let alone an extinct beast. So Jack uses a forensic mechanical press. It's able to recreate the bite marks left by a juvenile tyrannosaur on this rare hadrosaur tailbone.
We're actually able to reverse engineer the amount of force and amount of depth it would take for a juvenile tyrannosaur to sink its tooth into a hadrosaur.
Jack's experiment uses a replica juvenile tooth and a selection of cow bones. The press then drives the T-Rex tooth into the cow bone, with differing levels of force, until it recreates almost identical puncture marks to those found on the hadrosaur tailbone.
On these two specimens, we can see all the puncture marks we have experimentally created. And what we can see is that these large marks here, the oval-looking marks, are the best matches for the actual puncture marks. And they give us a sense of how much force it would have taken for a juvenile T-Rex to generate these marks on a hadrosaur tail. Our experiments actually suggest a higher bite force for juvenile T-Rex.
The juvenile bite force measures 5,641 newtons. To put that in perspective, although it's much less powerful than an adult T-Rex, this young Tyrannosaur's bite was still capable of crunching bone. At well over 5,000 newtons, it beats the king of the jungle, the lion.
It would have been most capable of puncturing thin bones, like those on the face or in certain parts of the tail.
Though an adult T-Rex could still run, the chase was probably a young animal's game, especially against a swift hadrosaur.
Juveniles, the teenagers, they had longer legs. They had more slender bodies. They could run faster. They were more agile. They could probably chase down prey over longer distances. The adults were bigger. They were bulkier. They couldn't move as fast. They probably couldn't really run more than about 10 miles an hour or so. Imagine carrying around 7 tons of muscle and flesh on your body, but only supporting it with 2 legs. That's what an adult would be.
So, how did this nimble juvenile end up as a hulking monster? Scientists are discovering that in its teenage years, T-Rex went through a sudden and dramatic metamorphosis. Throughout its life, T-Rex was an impressive eater. But bone analysis of juveniles reveals that T-Rex experienced a huge growth spurt as a teenager. In just 4 years, the juvenile that stalked the Badlands of Wyoming 66 million years ago grew from a 1-ton 14-year-old to a 5¼ ton 18-year-old, creating an adult body several times more massive, becoming a completely different creature.
The young T-Rexes, they would have been like Olympic sprinters. And over the course of their lives, they would have gone through a metamorphosis where they turned into heavyweight boxing champions. That's how T-Rex changed over the 30 years of its life.
So, what was T-Rex eating to grow so big, so quick? Popular imagination has it always feeding on other huge dinosaurs, like the hadrosaurs. But it's likely that juveniles mostly ate smaller creatures.
The younger ones with the longer legs that had more stamina, that could run faster, they could chase down prey over longer distances, but they were not huge animals, so they would have had to eat smaller prey, smaller dinosaurs, birds, mammals, lizards, those kind of things.
We know little about the number and nature of these small prehistoric creatures. That is because of the way fossils are created and detected.
Small bones, a lot more bad stuff can happen to them. They can break apart, they can crumble apart more easily. It's also, frankly, harder to spot them. There's a great deficit when it comes to small dinosaur species. As time goes on, I think we're going to discover that there were actually more small dinosaurs than there were big dinosaurs.
Often, the only small creatures preserved are those with uniquely tough remains, like prehistoric turtles.
All right, so this is our Cretaceous turtle shell. We've named the site Donatello after the most scientifically minded of the Ninja Turtles.
66 million years ago, these creatures would have lived alongside the giants of Wyoming.
Back in the late Cretaceous, tyrannosaurs and other dinosaurs were not the most common animals. They were, just like today, big animals vastly outnumbered by small ones, and turtles were among them. Did Tyrannosaurus have a taste for turtle soup? We do have evidence on some of the turtle shells that have been found here of Tyrannosaur bite marks on the shell. But the answer is probably yeah. Tyrannosaurus probably did snack on turtles.
Having such a varied diet allowed the juvenile to fuel its growth spurt. But as it expanded, it also changed proportion, its head swelling incredibly fast, whilst other body parts hardly changed at all.
We think of them as sort of the quintessential large-bodied carnivorous dinosaur. That's not true. They're actually a really, really weird group of carnivorous dinosaurs.
A T-Rex's forearms were one part of the dinosaur that didn't grow bigger as it matured into adulthood, making them look puny by comparison with the rest of the body.
The arms were so small and pathetic and tiny, these arms that were no bigger than my arms on an animal the size of a bus.
T-Rex's tiny arms are an enduring mystery. Paleontologists think that the reason why they stayed so small could be linked to the animal's supersized head and jaws.
That head really did all the work. T-Rex was like a giant land shark. So the T-Rex would have grabbed its prey with its jaws. It would have chopped up its prey. It would have swallowed its prey. The head was doing everything.
T-Rex's enormous head could have thrown its body off balance.
And that's probably a trade-off. Tyrannosaur is redepositing the weight on the front of the animal that was in the form of the arms into the head. So you sacrifice the arms to gain biting power. Next time you hear someone making fun of T-Rex for having those tiny little arms, and they really are small, T-Rex would have struggled to clap. It certainly couldn't wipe its mouth after a messy meal. You can remind that person those little arms are there so that T-Rex can have an incredibly nasty, bone-breaking bite.
Although its great weight now hindered its hunting ability, the adult T-Rex's overwhelming bite power allowed it to tackle other creatures the juvenile would never mess with. Among them was a plant eater called a nodosaur. A nodosaur was a cross between a prehistoric hedgehog and a tank. For a hungry T-Rex, this heavily armored beast that could weigh over a ton presented a completely different challenge.
Nodosaurs were big, armored, plant-eating dinosaurs, like this one here. They've got big osteoderms, that means bone that's growing within the skin, covering the back and forming sort of suit of armor. And you have not just thick, heavy plate armor, but bladed armor. You've got a suit of armor that a tyrannosaur could not stand on, could not bite into without cutting its own mouth open.
Any animal that took on a nodosaur needed to use brains as well as brawn.
One of the stereotypes of dinosaurs that still does persist is that these were these dumb brutes, that they had small brains and weren't very smart. But we know that's not really the case.
Scientists have used medical CAT scanning technology to probe the inside of T-Rex skulls. The data has been used to build accurate models of the shape and size of their brains, revealing that they were much larger than previously thought.
T-Rex was a lot smarter than most other reptiles because it had a much bigger brain in proportion to its body size. T-Rex was not just some brutish monster. It was a highly intelligent animal.
One way a clever T-Rex could turn a nodosaur into a meal would be by flipping it over and attacking its soft underbelly.
That is the kink in a nodosaur's armor.
Scott examines some nodosaur bones he's found that look like they've fallen victim to this very trick.
This is a bone from the pelvis. This is a hip bone. You'll see on this side, there's a great big hole running through it, and that hole is not supposed to be there. Instead, it looks like it matches up really, really nicely with one tooth from a tyrannosaur. It's possible that that does record the killing blow. This was a nodosaur that got munched on by a tyrannosaur.
Providing they could be caught, both hadrosaurs and nodosaurs were vulnerable to a T-Rex assault. Was there any creature in the Badlands that could truly give tyrannosaurs a run for their money? In Wyoming, the dig team unearthed something that could help provide the answer. An enormous bone.
Oh, I'm super excited about it. This is the end that we found initially, and we just dug into the hillside, and the bone kept going and going and going.
They think it's a leg bone from another dinosaur, Triceratops.
Triceratops is a huge herbivorous horned dinosaur, the largest of the horned dinos.
Their suspicions are confirmed when they find another fossil nearby.
That does look suspiciously frilly, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So this is looking like it's a section of Triceratops frill, the great neck shield at the back of the skull.
The frill of a Triceratops is a thick bone shield 1 meter wide. But it's just the tip of the iceberg in this animal's defenses. Triceratops had deadly horns up to almost a meter long, and a massive bone-plated skull with a razor-sharp, bone-cracking beak. Its low-slung, heavy body could grow over 9 meters long and was covered in thick, armor-plated skin. This meaty monster would be quite a catch, but in this vegetarian bruiser, T-Rex met its match.
Triceratops is a super badass dinosaur. Don't think of Triceratops socially as behaving like an elephant or a wildebeest. Think it more like a rhinoceros. Triceratops was more of a loner.
A loner with attitude. Healed bite marks in Triceratops bones have proved these animals survived T-Rex attacks. They could give as good as they got.
The classic clash between Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus is absolutely something that happened. If you're Tyrannosaur, you're scared of Triceratops. Triceratops is many tons of potentially angry and very, very sharp herbivore.
An angry and aggressive Triceratops was a challenge fit for only the largest and most experienced fighters.
Triceratops would not have been an easy meal, even for an adult, fully grown T-Rex. And for a younger T-Rex, one of those juveniles or teenagers, no way. A T-Rex juvenile, this would have been a non-starter situation.
It's unclear whether this Triceratops met its end in a fight to the death with a T-Rex. Further analysis may one day tell its story. For now, the big challenge is to remove it in one piece.
Okay, well, I'm happy with that. Even though the bone is fossilized, even though it's very, very hard, it's also incredibly brittle. If we just tried to yank it out right now, it would crumble apart in our hands. So what we need to do is to construct a plaster jacket around it.
Scott and his team prepare the bone with specialist glue before wrapping it in strips of fabric soaked in plaster of Paris. They then leave the bone to dry.
Really, it's the same technique a doctor would use wrapping a broken arm up in a cast while it heals.
Only once they are sure the bone is secure do they risk removing it.
Often the most dangerous part for the bone in any excavation is the flipping of the jacket. If we don't make our jacket well, the bone may crumble, it may give way, it may collapse under its own weight. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All the way, all the way. Yes! That is excellent. Beautiful. All right. Oh
Mission accomplished. The team take the Triceratops bone back to base. When this huge fossil is analyzed, it will provide another window on the astonishing kingdom of the T-Rex. But what happened to this lost world? The finds here reveal that 66 million years ago, the Wyoming of the late Cretaceous period supported a lush and fertile ecosystem. The team is constantly finding remnants of the huge variety of life that filled its forests and waterways.
So this is one scale from a garfish. Garfish are armor-plated. Their scales are covered in enamel, the same material that makes up our teeth. That makes them super hard and also gives the scales very, very high preservation potential.
The scale is evidence that at the time of T-Rex, this area was full of swamps and mangroves, perhaps a little like the Florida Everglades today. 66 million years ago, T-Rex had probably never had it so good.
This would have been a subtropical paradise. Out there in the plains would have been herds of herbivorous dinosaurs, and then in the shadows of the forest, presumably stalking their prey or just relaxing, would have been the Tyrannosaurs.
For millions of years, T-Rex was the alpha predator, affecting the lives and evolution of the creatures that lived in its shadow.
It ruled its ecosystems in North America at the end of the Cretaceous period. It was an ecosystem engineer.
You don't get the horns of Triceratops, the armor of Ankylosaurus, without the presence of Tyrannosaurus. They're all doing swell. We've got a thriving, complex dinosaur ecosystem.
So if this world was thriving, what went wrong? All the signs point to a sudden cataclysmic event.
Across Western North America and places like Montana and the Dakotas, you find bones of T-Rex, and they're fairly common in rocks that are about 66 to 67 million years old. And then those bones disappear. And there's this thin little layer of clay. It's just about a centimeter thick, and it's dated to precisely 66 million years ago. And that layer of clay seems to be a bookmark.
The clay contains a high concentration of the element iridium. Iridium is rare on Earth, but not in space.
That iridium was the chemical fingerprint, the calling card of an asteroid that came down and ended the reign of the dinosaurs and caused an enormous extinction.
The asteroid was almost 10 kilometers across, a piece of space rock taller than Mount Everest. The explosive impact triggered shockwaves, firestorms, and tsunamis, and a planet-wide cloak of dust that blotted out the sun. It caused destruction on a global scale that few creatures could endure.
For the dinosaurs, they had been ruling the world for over 150 million years. They had been through it all. They'd been through global warming, they'd been through times of cool temperatures, they've been through rising and falling sea levels, through volcanoes, through all sorts of things. But they couldn't survive that instantaneous carnage of the asteroid.
In the chaos of the impact and its aftermath, 3/4 of all species on the planet were wiped out, including the mightiest of them all, the T-Rex.
The end of the age of dinosaurs is an ecological collapse. Photosynthesis starts to fail from the lack of sunlight. That kills off a lot of the large herbivores, and ultimately that kills off the large carnivore, including Tyrannosaurus.
Earth would never again be a planet ruled by dinosaurs. But despite the devastation, other species survived and would eventually thrive.
Among the survivors were some tiny, anonymous, humble little shadow dwellers that only came out at night, that made little burrows into the ground to hide from the dinosaurs. And those were mammals. Those were our ancestors. We had ancestors that stared down that asteroid and bested the dinosaurs.
The end of the road for the T-Rex was the beginning of our world.
And in dying in the asteroid impact, T-Rex opened up space for our mammal ancestors to survive and to proliferate and to prosper and to eventually lead to us. And I think if that asteroid didn't hit and there were still T-Rexes and other dinosaurs around, there wouldn't be space for us. So this whole story, the dinosaurs, T-Rex, us, this is all interconnected.
A connection to the world of T-Rex does still survive in the creatures that fill the skies.
Today's birds are dinosaurs. They evolved from dinosaurs. They are part of the dinosaur family tree. They are part of the dinosaur family album. There's about 14,000 species of birds. There's only about 6,000 species of mammals today. So in that one sense, the dinosaurs continue their dominion over the mammals even in the present world.
Scott's T-Rex dig is over for another season.
I'm really happy with what we got.
But their hunt for the world of the T-Rex continues. This remarkable landscape still hides many secrets, and for even the most studied dinosaurs, many mysteries remain.
We have so little. We're like detectives at a crime scene where there's only one little bit of hair, one little fingerprint. So we need to find more.
The full story of T-Rex is yet to be revealed.